we're moving up some items on the program, and we're going to bring on the highlight of the day, our very, very special guest, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who has been online with us from the very beginning. And we're going to proceed with the fireside chat. We're privileged to be able to have the opportunity to have this conversation with Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. But before we do that, we are just going to read, we're going to play a video that will just give us an insight into this huge and well-known personality locally and internationally, so that we know who is online and in the room with us this afternoon.
A global icon, a change agent, an exemplary leader, an admirable woman of resonant impact. She has inspired even by her aspirations, by being the first woman and Black person to be put powerfully in contention for the World Bank presidency. In her country, she has achieved two significant firsts: the first female minister of two powerful ministries, finance and foreign affairs. She spearheaded negotiations with the Paris Club that achieved the unprecedented feat of securing both a $30 billion debt relief for Nigeria and the outright cancellation of $18 billion of Nigeria's debt. She also enabled and led several reforms that enhanced transparency in government accounts and strengthened institutions against corruption. Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala is a global financial expert, an economist, and international development professional with over 30 years' experience working in Africa, Asia, Europe, Latin America, and North America. Dr. Okonjo-Iweala was born on the 13th of June 1954 in Delta State, Nigeria. After completing her earlier education in Nigeria, she proceeded to Harvard University in 1976, graduating magna cum laude with an AB in economics, and thereafter obtained a PhD in regional economics and development from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, in 1981. Since then, she has been bestowed with honorary degrees from 16 universities worldwide, some of them from the most prestigious universities such as Yale University, University of Pennsylvania, Brown University, all in the US, Trinity College Dublin, and the latest, just a few weeks ago, from our own Bowen University here in Nigeria. She commenced her 30-year career as an intern in the World Bank Group in Washington, D.C., and rose up the ladder to the position of Vice President. Following her first term as Nigeria's Minister of Finance, she was appointed Managing Director, Operations of World Bank, where she piloted several World Bank initiatives to assist low-income countries during the 2008 to 2009 food crisis, and later again during the financial crisis. In 2010, she was appointed chair of the World Bank's successful drive to raise $49.3 billion in grants and low-interest credits for the poorest countries in the world. During her second term as Nigeria's Minister of Finance in 2011, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala left indelible marks in several areas and sectors of the economy. She empowered Nigerian women and youth by championing the Growing Girls and Women in Nigeria program, GWIN, a gender-responsive budgeting system, and the acclaimed Youth Enterprise with Innovation program, UWIN, to support entrepreneurship and create jobs. Dr. Okonjo-Iweala has continued to serve and to lend her support to several impactful groups engaged in the promotion of healthcare, economic development, and policy making. She currently serves as the chair of the board of Gavi, the vaccine alliance which has immunized 760 million children globally and saved 13 million lives since its creation. She sits on the boards of Standard Chartered PLC and Twitter Incorporated, and was recently appointed as African Union Special Envoy to mobilize international financial support for the fight against COVID-19, and WHO Special Envoy for Access to COVID-19 Tools Accelerator. Dr. Okonjo-Iweala is the founder of Nigeria's first ever indigenous opinion research organization, NOI Polls. She also founded the Center for the Study of Economies of Africa, CSEA, a development research think tank based in Abuja, Nigeria, and is a distinguished visiting fellow at the Center for Global Development and also at the Brookings Institution think tank. Her endeavors and impact do not end there. She is the author of several articles and books. 3 of her significant titles are Fighting Corruption is Dangerous, The Story Behind the Headlines, Reforming the Unreformable, Lessons from Nigeria, Women and Leadership, Real Lives, Real Lessons. This was co-authored with the former and first female Prime Minister of Australia, Julia Gillard. Dr. Okonjo-Iweala is a Commander of the Federal Republic, CFR. She has also gained the recognition of various independent organizations, governments, and bodies. These are too numerous to list, but include being named an Angelopoulos Global Public Leader at Harvard Kennedy School 2020, recipient of the International Service Award of the World Affairs Councils of America 2020, recipient of the Aminu Kano Award for Leadership 2020, appointed to the Presidential Economic Advisory Council of South Africa, one of 8 female anti-corruption fighters who inspire, Transparency International 2019. Aspen Institute's Madeleine K. Albright Global Development Award 2017. One of the 50 greatest world leaders, Fortune 2015. Top 100 most influential people in the world, Time 2014. Top 100 most powerful women in the world, Forbes 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014. And the list goes on. She has also gained high honors from the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire and the Republic of Liberia. She has recently emerged meritoriously through a rigorous process as the consensus candidate for appointment as DG of the WTO. We are proud of this achievement and look forward to her overcoming the final hurdle to become the first female and first Black DG of the World Trade Organization. Dr. Okonjo-Iweala is married to Dr. Ikemba Iweala, a neurosurgeon, and they are blessed with children and grandchildren. Ladies and gentlemen, in recognition of Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala's advocacy and work for global economic development, good governance, healthcare, and women empowerment, WISCAR is delighted to present the 2020 Distinguished WISCAR Award to a phenomenal woman and worthy recipient.
Wow, what an amazing personality. What a phenomenal woman. What an inspiration and what a role model. I wish this was a physical event so that we could really hear the resounding applause, but I'm going to clap myself right here for this amazing local and international personality. Thank you so much, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, for being with us. We're going to move straight into the fireside chat because of time. And typically when we have these things, you know, it's very relaxed and we're all sitting around, sitting next to each other on a chair. But please, I'd like you to just imagine that we're having this conversation with this amazing woman who has been supporting other women, you know, has been contributing so much to economic development, contributing through in so many spheres of life. And a lot of the time with international personalities and local personalities and icons of her own type, we sometimes think, you know, that we know them. And we found in WISCAR, from our Meet a WISCAR events over the years, that, you know, it's only in the course of the interviews that you can actually get to know these personalities, know them completely beyond what is on their CVs and all their good works, which we have, some of which we have heard about this morning. So, Madam Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, my first question to you is just for you to give a very brief insight into your upbringing and the people and the experiences that have molded you into the personality, the great personality that you are today that we all admire.
Well, thank you very much, Amina. Before I say anything, let me congratulate you on this wonderful occasion and on all the occasions you've organized for WISCAR in the past. Just first listening to the comments, seeing the comments from the young women, it's inspired me. You know, I feel very energized. I feel happy. There's nothing like being surrounded by young women to make me feel there's hope in the world. Secondly, you brought some of my most favorite people in the world to speak. My older sister, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who herself is a mentor, Pumzile, who is doing a fantastic job. And then two of the men that I love so much in Nigeria, Aigi Mokwede and Tedo Peterside. So how can I complain? This is a very, very nice beginning. So thank you for doing that. Now, I don't know where to start. When I was listening to the long list of things I've done, I was saying to myself, is this really me? But let me just say that I grew up in the village because my parents left when I was 1 year old to go and study in Germany, my father and mother. And so I grew up with my grandmother for almost the first 8.5 years of my life. And she made sure that I did not think about privileges, but that I really grew up like a child, doing what every other child does in the village, going to the farm with her. She had several fields. She was a widow, so she used to hire workers to work the farms, and we would go along with them and to see what they were doing. I went to the stream, which was like 2 miles away from our house, to fetch water in the morning before going to school. I went to the primary school at the back of our house. And so I lived this life. She made sure that by the time I was 7, 8, I could cook, clean house, do all sorts of things. She was a very strong disciplinarian, but also a very loving grandmother. So I consider that I had a wonderful childhood in the village, and it really strengthened me and also made me see firsthand how people live in our villages and our rural areas. And then when my parents came back, they went to both work at the University of Ibadan to teach. And so my life changed completely, and I was taken to Ibadan. I grew up then in the university compound, went to the senior staff school, started secondary school at International, switched to Queen's School Enugu after taking the common entrance exam and coming third nationally. And then the war came. So we were on the Biafran side during the war. My father was a brigadier in the Biafran army. Even though I'm from Delta State, we moved over on the other side. And there, it was a tough time, you know, seeing young children die of kwashiorkor, living through 3 years of bombardment and just some of the most difficult times, you know, running from place to place. And that's why I often joke with people that I can sleep on a mud floor, a cement floor one day and be perfectly comfortable, and sleep on a feather bed the next, meaning I can live in pretty sparse conditions of hardship, as many of our people live at home, and I can also live in a very nice environment and thrive in both, because I've been through so many things in my life. So my parents lost everything in their mid-40s after the war and had to start from scratch. And I'll just tell you one little thing that my father told me, because I think it's one of those things that helped to shape the way I think. After the war, we had nothing. They lost all their savings, every single thing. We had no car, no nothing, nothing, hardly even clothes. And I remember my parents had gone from Ibadan to the University of Nigeria in Soka. And we were in a house, no furniture, nothing. Our furniture was cement blocks that we gathered here and there. And so my father was sitting on a cement block talking to another colleague of his, another lecturer visiting. And I heard him saying, you know, sounding so happy, everything is fine. And so after the man left, I went to him and said, Daddy, what do you mean everything? I was very upset. Of course, as a teenager, you know, 14, 15, what is he talking about? And then he said, sit down. And he said to me, we have everything. And I just looked and said, you know, Daddy again, what on earth is he talking about? So he could see that I was very skeptical. And he looked at me and said, once you have a head on your shoulders and you have your brains, you have everything. Material things are not as important, because if you lose them, you can regain them very quickly. And so that stayed with me all my life. And you know, that was so inspiring to me. So that's you know, an encapsulation. From there, I went to St. Anne's School, Ibadan, after the war. And when I finished my school cert and my HSC at that time, I took the exam to Cambridge University in the UK, and also applied to Harvard. I got into both, and I decided to go to Harvard. Then my family said I should, because my mother, who had come back from Germany with a master's, decided to do her PhD at Boston University. So they thought she could overlook me and make sure I didn't, I paid attention to my studies. So we were both ending up in the same place. And that's how I went to Harvard. So that's a quick encapsulation of the early years.
Okay, so I was saying that's a really insightful story and very, very useful background. And I think that speaks to, you know, your strength of character and the fact that you're very, very grounded, and the humility that you display in spite of all your achievements, because you understand what it is like to have and not to have, and the inequities that exist in our world today. I think we would also, if you would please also share with us, you know, the trajectory of your career journey, which I think a lot of people would be interested in listening, in hearing about, you know, but particularly the route you took and how you have chosen those routes to navigate to the very, very senior positions, you know, in the World Bank and in the federal government, you know, that many of us women aspire to.
Before I say anything, let me just say that I've always been motivated by what can I do, first to give back, and secondly, what can I do and I would enjoy doing, whilst also earning a living and at the same time giving back. So that's quite a challenge, because my father always made us believe that education is a privilege. It's not for you to enrich yourself, but for you to try and figure out what you can contribute to society. And he thought that teaching young people, that's why he was a career academic, and then he worked for the UN. He thought that was his way of giving back. So I thought I would be an academic, because from the age of 9, I saw academics all around me, all my uncles and aunts, my parents. So that's really what I was thinking. I'll go and do my PhD and I'll come back to teach. I thought that would give me joy and I'd be able to give back. So I actually even applied to the University of Ibadan and got accepted as a lecturer when I finished. But due to the things happening in the country at the time, I ended up applying to the World Bank and going there as a young professional. What was motivating me? I was very interested in issues of development. That's what I had studied. And I really was motivated by what career can I have other than being an academic, which would allow me to give back to people, which would allow me to be in touch with the man and woman on the ground. At that time, I never thought about being a finance minister or really working in government, to be honest with you. That was all accidental, and I'll come to it. But I really thought about, okay, I'm going to work in an organization where I can give back to people all over the world and learn something, which I can then bring back to my country at some time and use to serve and help people, not necessarily in government, but in some other capacity. My central motivation was service and enjoying the job. And I must say that when I applied to the World Bank as a young professional, it was really very competitive. At that time, we were 2,000 applicants and they took 50. It was purely on merit. Today is even worse. I think there are like 6,000 applicants and they still take like 50. So it was tough competition, but I've always also aimed to go places where I don't have to depend on anyone. There's no as man, no man, or as woman, no woman to get where you're going. That's what my father told me. My father never once helped me to get any job or anything. He just taught all of us in our family, I will educate you. After that, it's up to you to get where you're going. So I did that. I got into the World Bank Young Professionals and I started working and I had such a good time working all over the world, learning. I always want to work where I can learn and keep learning. And so the bank was perfect for that. You not only were giving, but you were learning, you were in service, and so on and so forth, with all its flaws and all its benefits. So I started my career there. And from saying I would stay 2.5 years, I ended up with a whole career of 25 years and just moved up the ranks.
Wow, that's amazing. So, I mean, two interesting things that have come out there, so, you wanted to learn, you had an aspiration to give back, and you were interested also in development. And as you worked, you were rewarded on merit for your work, and you kept climbing up the ladder on that basis. But what would be really, really interesting and intriguing for us is, given what you've already shared with us, what prompted you to come back home and take up, the ministerial appointments? And to leave all of that behind, that structure, that process, and to come back into, public service in Nigeria?
Well, I mean, it was really this giving back that I've always talked about. I was just in 2000, I was asked by President Obasanjo to come back to help with solving the debt issues of our country. And it was at that time, with the support of himself, we were able to create the debt management office that exists today. After that stint in which we were able to put our debt numbers and systematize them, he then asked me to come back in 2003 to be Minister of Finance. And so what motivated me to leave behind, I actually had to resign my job at the World Bank because you're not allowed to take leave of absence if you take a ministerial position. So it was a little bit risky because if it didn't work out, I didn't really have an automatic place to come back to. But I was so convinced that, look, you have some things you've learned. You have some expertise in economic development, in debt management. You can use all this to serve the country. And that's what motivated me. I cannot tell you that being Minister of Finance is the most enjoyable job in the world. I'm sure you can talk to other ministers. It's really quite tough, but I was so committed because I think Nigeria, with all its problems, is one of the most exciting countries in the world. And I really love the country. Sometimes I ask myself, why? You must be crazy. Why do you love this country? After all the stuff you've been through, all the difficulties and challenges, but I do. So I came back because of that and because I could help.
And you made huge achievements. You led the revival of the nation's financial health. You introduced transparent and sustainable practices. You represented Nigeria's image as well as her bilateral and multilateral relations with assurance and aplomb. We're very, very proud of you. I used to follow your footsteps in those days up in Abuja. And lastly, you carried out, you carried the full responsibility for the economic well-being, of the country as the I think it was described as the coordinating minister for the economy at the time. So I'm sure that with each of these offices and appointments, they came with their own peculiar challenges, especially in our environment here. So could you kindly just share just a few of the obstacles and challenges that you were confronted with in these roles and how you overcame them? And secondly, just touch on whether you think your gender and your leadership style was a factor in overcoming the challenges.
Well, thank you. First of all, let me acknowledge, and this I must say, that nobody achieves alone. And I want to pay complete tribute to all those who worked with me in the Ministry of Finance, Foreign Affairs, to the economic teams that worked with me, and to the presidents I served. Without all this support, I wouldn't have been able to do what I was able to do for the country. So tribute to all of them. Now, you know, being the first female finance minister and first female foreign minister is not easy. And first, you have to give tribute to President Obasanjo and President Goodluck Jonathan, who had the courage to make these appointments. I think that there were people, you know, I had like two things, I would call them strikes against me. First, being a woman, taking up this position of Minister of Finance for the first time in the country's history. There were people who felt that, why is a woman in this position, is seen as a very powerful, if not the most powerful position as a minister. They never saw all of the difficulties. All they saw was, you know, the power. And, you know, I mean, I did not see the power. I wish I had. All I saw was the awesome responsibility of trying to reorganize the finances of the country, help to fight corruption, improve our financial profile, and improve our rate of development. And so there were also those who felt that, oh, she's come from the World Bank, you know, so she must be some kind of neoliberal, you know, spying for these people. And so that was another challenge. So I felt that gender, there were those who genuinely did not see why a woman should be Minister of Finance at that time. They had not seen it in our country. It wasn't even common all over the world. Do you know that for the first time, if the Biden administration comes in, when it comes in, that will be the first time the US will have a female finance minister? They also have never had it. So it's not unique to Nigeria, it's all over the world. I think, did my being a woman help to contribute to the way I manage things? I think maybe in some ways, and I'll tell you why I think so. I think women, and I hate generalizing because there are always exceptions, but in the main, I found women are less egocentric. Sometimes, you know, to solve problems, ego gets in the way. And that's why you have all the difficulties and all the challenges. I love men, but sometimes their egos are quite large. You know, and so I used to say, look, to get things done, sometimes you have to put your ego in your handbag. That's what I used to say. So you have to, I felt like many of the women I worked with were less egocentric. And that enables you to solve many problems, not to look at how people are perceiving you, but to focus more on results. I also thought that being empathetic, being able to listen more, was very important. But at the same time, I mean, I must tell you that in a place like Nigeria, you have to be absolutely focused on why you're there and what results do you want to achieve, whether you're a woman or a man. If you don't, there's so many ways in which you can be sidetracked, derailed, and not achieving. So on that front, I was quite tough, very focused, not allowing myself to be distracted by all sorts of things that happen at home. So those were some of I think I overcame challenges by being completely focused and being focused on deliveries and getting results and having some wins for the country.
Into my next question, which is, touching on, you're also, in addition to all these amazing accomplishments, an author. You've now written 3 books. You've written Fighting Corruption is Dangerous, the story behind the headlines, Reforming the Unreformable, Lessons from Nigeria. And you've recently released your 3rd book, which I'm very, very pleased to say that I have a copy of and I have read, called Women and Leadership. And it's a fantastic read, real lives and real lessons. And I commend that to all the women out there and the men to read. It's a fantastic, easy to read book, which you co-authored with the former Prime Minister of Australia, Julia Gillard, and has made for fascinating reading. and of course is the result of tremendous research, as we would expect, and valuable research as we would expect from you. In the book, when I read the book, I was intrigued by several things, but I'll just pull out this particular item, which was that you questioned, of course, in the course of writing the book, several iconic women who are role models and people we all admire. And you talked about the glass labyrinth, as opposed to the well-known, concepts and expressions of glass ceiling or the glass cliff. So can you give us more insight into this? So what is the glass labyrinth, and why and how have you found this particular imagery of navigation useful in discussing women's progression in life and work?
Well, thank you, Amina. As you said, there are several of these concepts. The glass ceiling, this is the one we're most familiar with. The glass cliff, I will also talk about that a little bit. And the glass labyrinth, where you're moving from assignment or job to job in very difficult areas to navigate. And women are often found, to be the ones who are sometimes found in these positions where they move from one assignment, difficult assignment, to the other, in a pathway which is often very difficult, that men many times do not encounter. And to get where you're going, you often have to go through several of these tough situations and assignments. So it's like navigating a labyrinth rather than a straightforward path from one job to the other. And so we found that many women face not only this glass ceiling, not only even the glass labyrinth, which is quite very difficult, but also the glass cliff. That is women being brought on to lead positions when things are not working well. And so it's like you fall off a glass cliff because you either succeed or it's very risky, and you can succeed or you can also fail spectacularly. And the question is, why is it that women are the ones who are brought on in all these difficult situations and positions, whether it is trying to get into an area where women have never been before, whether it is finding yourself in a labyrinthic position from wandering from one difficult assignment to the other, whether it's being brought on to an assignment when things are not working. All of these are situations that women tend to encounter and have encountered among the women that we talked to. And I think when women read this book, they often find so much that speaks to them and so much of their experience as well.
Thank you so much. I mean, I can definitely identify with the glass cliff. In the previous corporate organization I worked with, I worked there for 12 years, and I wasn't even made an offer of MD until I finally spoke up. But when there was an existential threat and a crisis, the gender lens, as you say, fell away, and suddenly I became the best woman for the job. So can definitely identify with that. Moving on very quickly, according to the World Economic Forum, the state of gender equity and equality in the world is still estimated as being over 100 years away from where it ought to be. What critical steps from your experience or policy changes must we take as a nation to help advance the contribution of women and the youth to our economic and social development?
Well, thank you. That's a very big question. I mean, that would take a whole day to talk about. But let me just say that some of the numbers are important to look at all over the world. Right now, only 7% of all the countries in the world have female leaders in 2020, just 7%. 1 out of every 4 parliamentarians in the world is a woman, which is a very low number. And only 6.6% of Fortune 500 companies have women CEOs. So you can see how low the numbers are. And of course, in our own country, I think maybe 5 to 7% of women are parliamentarians, and maybe 16% of women in the cabinet. It used to be 33% or so before I left. So we still have challenges confronting women and youth. And I strongly believe two things. One, women, there's nothing that God did that said that he had apportioned more brains to men than women. I think God created us with an equal share of brains. So there's absolutely no reason why women should be 7%, even 1/4 of leadership. So something doesn't work there. And I believe, as you heard Ig and Atedo and everybody else talk about, women should be seen more often in these leadership positions, but it will not be given to us. You have to be willing to take risks. You have to be willing to fight for it. Second, youth. Our youth are our future, and our youth are so talented. I have to say that every time I run against Nigerian youth, African youth, they are creative, they are thinking, they're energetic, and but we must find the right economic environment for them to be able to thrive and acquit themselves. And I say to the youth themselves, don't wait for people to create jobs for you. Think about how you can create jobs and employ yourself and others. Because government cannot take the responsibility for creating jobs, we have to look at how to support entrepreneurship among our youth. But it is up to us to also give them the right, transparent environment within which they can thrive. And that's why we had a little bit this EndSARS movement looking for accountability, good governance. We need to have good governance for our youth to thrive. So I think that is what our government should present or prepare for you. On your side, you have to take your destiny in your hands. Create that job. Don't wait for someone to create it for you. So those are two of the quick things. I think that's the way we can help move the country, the way we can help empower women and empower youth.
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to still push you a little bit more on this subject because, 2023 elections are in view, and I'm really concerned that we end up again with the same kind of statistics that we currently have. So I just, because you have a wealth of experience, both from the World Bank, working in government in Nigeria for so many years, handling significant portfolios. I mean, can you give us some insight into, a little bit more insight into what we can actually do between now and then to increase, the female political representation to at least a minimum of 35%, of all, to ensure that at least 35% of women are in elective or appointed office in Nigeria?
Well, thank you. Looking at the experience from other countries, what we've learned is that it will not happen automatically. The women have to organize. And there's so many talented women in Nigeria, and talented women organizations too. There's WIMBIS, there's WISCAR, there are so many. So I think it's incumbent on the women to get together. When I spoke to women in politics in Nigeria, they really face daunting prospects. Even as a minister, you face daunting prospects as a woman, let alone an elected politician. First you need the financing. That is one of the areas where there is a big gap, because then, when you don't have it, it leads people to all kinds of things, godfatherism and so on. So the women have to organize. Second, you need moral support, because what happens to many women is that as they campaign, they're intimidated, things are said to them, that are not acceptable. If they are married women, it becomes even more difficult. I don't need to go into all that. So to change that, you have to have strong women organizations. You all have to get together and organize and say, how can we support those women that want to, how can we be there for them all the time? And I have to say that sometimes women are not there for each other all the time. We have to change this. We have to have women backing other women, not competing in a very destructive fashion with them. The men sometimes give us few positions. That's what we say in our book. A few positions are left for us, and then we end up competing in a very destructive way against each other, instead of saying, why don't we expand the number of positions available to us? So we must back these other women. We must give them moral support. Now, President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf has opened up a women's leadership center and a foundation to support it, because she's seen that for women to enter politics, they need the coaching, the mentoring that you're trying to do, and they need the financial support, and they need the hand-holding as well. So that's what I would say. Organize, organize, organize.
Oh, that's so useful. Thank you so much. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, I mean, I thought I was a bold person and I thought I was courageous, but honestly, you are so, so bold and so, so courageous. I mean, what has given you the courage to compete for some of these top jobs, including, most recently, the position of DGWT, or World Trade Organization, and to be prepared to succeed or fail with the whole world watching? I think you have to tell us something on that front.
Well, I mean, this last one was very daunting. Like I said, I said this thing, I said, it was a situation where you will fail in front of the whole world and succeed in front of the whole world. And so I think it epitomizes the way I've approached my career. And I've approached it by being willing to take on challenges and succeed or fail. But I always believed in trying. You have to try. If you see something that will bring benefit to others and to the world, you have to try for it, even if it's risky, even if you're going to fail. So that has been my approach, but I call it considered risk. So I can try and not make it, but I am proud that I've tried, that I've shown women and men that women cannot be left out of these positions. So that has been sort of a creed with me, that you see something where women are shut out, where you think that if you get it, you could give more service or tackle the challenges, and you go for it. And if you don't succeed, it's also a kind of success, because you've shown. So women know that you don't always have to get this job. You don't always have to be at the top. I didn't really plan my career saying I'll move from one position to the other to the top. It just happened because I chose things where I had a firm belief and commitment that you could do this service, and there's no reason why women should be kept out. And then you go for it. And even if you don't get it, just merely trying and showing women that you can do it will mean that the next woman, the younger generation, will have the courage to try. But if all of us don't take that considered risk, in other words, I'm not saying just go take any risk when you don't have the qualifications. No, make sure you have the qualifications, you have the guts, you're prepared to work hard, then you take the considered risk. So that's what I'm saying. But if we don't try at all, then it will continue to have a situation in which men run the bulk of organizations all over the world. So there's still some let me just use that because we don't have much time. The WTO and the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, that preceded it, have been there for 75 years. And they've been run by white males mostly. And then two males from other countries from Asia and Latin America. In 75 years, no woman has been able to run that organization, and certainly no woman of color. So that's one thing. So it was good to try and show, but really what motivated me is that this is a very important organization, one of the most important multilaterals in the world, which we need. Developing countries need this in order to succeed in trade. We want to trade our way out of poverty. We want to create improved living standards for ourselves, not through aid, but through trade. So why is it that we can't also go to this organization and turn it around so it can support us and support the world better? That was really what motivated me. So when I was very humbled to be nominated by the president for this job, I said, okay, this is something we need to work with that can help Africa. We have the African Continental Free Trade Area. How can the WTO support us in Africa to be able to do better for ourselves, improve our trade, which is just 15%, intra-African trade is just 15%, and Africa's share of world trade is 3%. these are very low numbers. How can the WTO help to support us? So that was a big motivation. And then, of course, the fact that no woman has run it, why not? It cannot be that only men have the brains and the courage and what it takes to run these organizations. So that's why I said, I will accept to try for it. And so I went. But it was daunting in the sense that this time, as it was with the World Bank, but this one is even worse, you are competing in front of the whole world. We started out as eight competitors from all over the world. And in each phase, some people will be eliminated. So you're sitting there, I had a nerve-wracking time because I didn't know whether I would be in the first round to be eliminated, the second round to be eliminated, and then everybody will be there seeing you fail. But I said all the same, you know, it's not the kind of job application where you put in your application and they say, we are not taking you. Nobody knows about it. You just go back to your house and apply for another job. Now you're applying in front of the whole world. You're being interviewed in front of the whole world. You know, so I said, okay, I will try it. And by God's grace, not by my own, I was able to make it all the way and come out on top as a person. So considered risk.
Congratulations, Madam, and we're praying for you to overcome the final hurdle. I don't know whether you describe your experience as having gone through a glass labyrinth, or maybe you have another concept to share with us in this regard.
I mean, now let me tell you, I think this one is a glass cliff, like what you said, because the challenges are so enormous that when I get there, it's going to take some time. All of you will have to come behind me.
We're there for you, and we're praying on our knees that we hear the good news soon, before Christmas, by God's grace.
It will be in January, not Christmas.
January now, okay. Well, we're all rooting for you.
Thank you.
I think just as we're rounding up very quickly, because I know you're pressed for time, I just thought, you know, if you could also share with us, having done the research you've done in your new book and with your wealth of experience, what you think are the most significant personal attributes, you know, for leadership, and what other attributes have you also observed in your interactions with other global female icons?
Thank you, Amina. One of the things we saw when we were writing this book, and we thought we'd write it because so many women ask us for mentorship, and you can only mentor so many people at a time. But if you capture experiences, originally Julia and I were going to just write about our own experience, and then we thought, why should it be just us? Let's talk to other female leaders. And one thing we noticed is, you'll be surprised when you read the book, that even the women leaders still have all these experiences that you're talking about. There's no right recipe to be a leader. It's not a cookie cutter thing where I can tell you do 1, 2, 3. But what I can tell you is that if you're going to be a leader, you have to be yourself. Do not pretend to be someone else. Be yourself. And you have to have self-confidence. Third, I find that it helps if you're going to be a leader to want to give back. And giving back doesn't just mean government service. Please know that. You can give back in civil society. You can give back in the private sector. Just being a woman running a winning enterprise in the private sector, employing other people, that is also giving back. So let's not get this idea that it's only in government service. But of course, government service, because we need all the talented people we can get. So what we found among these women is they had self-confidence to move, even when they were being criticized. And some of them, you know, like Julia, the first ever female Prime Minister of Australia, had so many attacks and criticisms, similar to some of those that I had as well. But she had the self-confidence and the vision and what she wanted to achieve for her country to carry on. And this is a systematic thing we found. Why are you going into this leadership position? You should ask yourself that. What do you hope to achieve? Please be results oriented. Then have the self-confidence to carry on and to be yourself. Now, you will also find in the book that the women had to endure so many things. Women, one of the things common to all the women is their appearance. Whereas men can come in, they have their uniform, the suit. People don't mind if they don't look a bit untidy, but the women have found systematically that people would look at their appearance before they even listened to what they had to say. And they would be criticized for what they were wearing, for how they were wearing it, etc., etc. So they had to evolve ways and means, you know, a kind of uniform will find a way so that people would not focus on what they were wearing, but on their head. The women, Caucasian women were talking about how people focus on their hair. Well, I said to them, you know, I have my head tie. And so by the time I put that on and wear my dress, my Nigerian outfit, which I always wear, nobody's looking at my hair, which is gray anyway, or thinking about it. So evolve a style for yourself. You know, try to get people to focus on the substance of what you're saying, not your appearance, and be yourself. Don't be afraid to say what you think. Don't be afraid to make your presence felt in a very nice way, and don't be afraid to make your point.
Thank you so much. I just want to ask one more question before we at least give our participants an opportunity to ask a few questions. And I didn't want to end this conversation without asking you to comment on, you know, some of the recent agitation in our country by male and female youth who have been agitating essentially for the future that they want, a future without police brutality, and in the words of Aisha Yusufu, a future where a nobody can become somebody without knowing anybody. So kindly share your thoughts on the demands of our youth for respect, accountability, and good governance.
I mean, I'm totally for it. And I said so in the recent speech at Bowen University. I think that responsible demands should be listened to and met. I think that people making their demands heard peacefully. I want to stress that peacefully, because if you go into violence, that is actually what those you're talking to, many of them will say, look, they are not responsible. So please demand peacefully. But why not? You know, we have to be accountable wherever we are, but especially in government. We have to deliver results to our young people. You know, Africa is young, Nigeria is young. By 2050, the continent will have by far and away the largest pool of young workers in the world. And we have to think carefully what this means. If we don't create an environment where our young people feel they can thrive and that their talents can be utilized, we are heading for serious trouble. So when they demand accountability and good governance, and they demand it in a peaceful fashion, I want to stress that, I think they need to be listened to. And again, you have the democratic process. I mean, if you sit in your house and think that things are going to change if you don't exercise your right to vote, that is also not going to work. So the power is in your hands to exercise that, you know, that ability to vote and make sure your vote counts, and also to make your demands peacefully. The last thing I want to say about that is you can also be an agent for change. Don't always wait for the government to do this and the government to do that and to change. You can try to help with that change. Try to set up, and I know some of our young people have done this, where they've set up organizations that look at how accountable government is, and they publish the results. And so you can think of, how can I myself, beyond making my demands known, what can I set up that can help make this accountability happen? Or at least make it transparent what is not going right.
Thank you so much. So a few questions from our participants. Orifie Uyo would like to know what your biggest challenge in the Federal Executive Council was when you were a minister. And she also wants to know whether you have any regrets and what advice you would give to current and future female ministers.
Oh, I have absolutely no regrets. I felt really it was an honor and a privilege to serve my country, difficult as it was. And I think the greatest difficulty that I faced was really, I think, when we tried to make trade-offs. When I first became Minister of Finance, I found that really in the cabinet, we were not making trade-offs the way that we should. Trade-offs meaning that you have so many sectors to finance. You have a fixed, limited amount of money to finance it. So you have to decide what are the priorities that you need to deliver from year to year. And then you all have to get behind it. You know, the president supports that, you all get behind. But because we are not really used to that, you know, the budget will be apportioned in little packets everywhere. So to change that way of thinking and say, let's put the bulk of our money behind those sectors which we feel can give results. That was quite challenging because, you know, the colleagues whose sectors did not receive as much money as they wanted were not very happy about it. You know, they would look at you and, you know, some of them were politicians. So this woman is trying to prevent me from being successful. What does she mean by saying that the priority should be here as opposed to where my sector is? So that was quite challenging. But at the end of the day, I have to say of my colleagues in cabinet, in the two cabinets I served, that by the time we had gone through the exercise, they had understood, and the presidents I served supported my work very strongly, that we were able to understand and come to terms. But that was a little bit of a tough one.
Fantastic. Another question from Titilola Alabi. Is there a defined career path for someone aspiring to work in the international development roles? What advice would you give?
Well, I don't, you know, there's not really a defined career path. I think you have to, one, choose the kind of organization you want to work in internationally, and then just try to seize the opportunities. What I did was to try to move from one experience to the other. I happened to land in an organization where, you know, you can move from one region of the world to the other. In fact, to some extent, you are required to do that. And you had to compete internally. People don't know this. Within the World Bank, when you want to move from one job to the other, there's an internal labor market. And you have to compete as if you're applying for the job afresh. But it also means there's an element of, what do you call it, merit-based approach. So there's no career path. It is looking for those opportunities that come, that give you the ability to expand your experience and your learning, and being willing to do some of the tough things and to move from perhaps one part of the world to the other. That exposes you to so much more. And as you move, you can use your experience and people get to know, look, this person can do this. And then, you know, that will help. Lastly, for those who don't like too much adventurism and moving around, you can try to get into a development organization that is working either in a part of the world or all over, and then just stay there and try to work hard and make a career within it. So those are two particular ways in which you can thrive, or you can create your own organization, which will also, you know, help you do development and give back.
One last question from the participants. You know, people believe that you have it all, you know, a wonderful career, wonderful family, married with children, you know, grandchildren. How have you managed to balance work, family, and personal life, especially since you have worked in predominantly male-dominated environments, and also at the time when your family was young? How did you cope? How did you manage?
I just had my 4th grandchild 5 days ago.
Wow, congratulations.
And I'm so excited. You know, but nobody has it all. This myth of people having it all. I wake up in the morning too, saying, you know, facing challenges on a daily basis. So don't have that myth that people have it all. Even all the female leaders, if you read this book, you'll find that balancing work and life. You know, Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, you know, who is only the 2nd woman in all of history to have a baby while in office, said to us that there's nothing like balancing. She just makes it work. And so she said there's no balance. She feels guilty all the time. She makes it work. So I think the idea of making it work also is what I went in with. But I do want to say one thing. For me and for many women, the way that it works is if you have a partner, a spouse, who totally believes in what you're doing. I don't think you can make it work without that. So you have to be honest when you are getting married. Don't wait. I mean, make sure your partner understands that you have a mind to have a career and that you want to give back and you want to do X, Y, and Z, and discuss it openly. Many women don't table what they want and how they want it openly. They wait until they are in, and then they think, once I'm married, I'll tell him this, I'll tell him that. By that time, it's too late. You've got to be honest right from the start, and then have a spouse who will support you. So that is for me, that was the first. So even my husband is a neurosurgeon. So you can imagine how busy he himself was. But because we both believed in each other's careers and we both could communicate with each other, even during the most difficult times in our marriage, we were able to overcome difficulties to make it work. So communication helps you maintain that balance, making your spouse and your children, feel that you're also there for them. Finally, with my children, I have 4. 3 of them are physicians, writers, activists for one of them. We just, first of all, very early in life, I tried to make them read. And my husband was very instrumental. So when I'd be working, when I came home, I'll be at the weekends, they'll have a book and they'll be sitting next to me and be reading their book. So they started to read very early at 2.5 and 3. And that really helped me a lot. 2, I established a routine in my house so that things were done at a certain time in a certain way. So whenever I was traveling, I could look and know this is what the children are doing at this time. And it seemed to work. It gave me perhaps more comfort. It was more for me to know that things were not going haywire while I was away, because that would distract me. So I put in a routine. I taught the children how to take care of things very early. And because we're living in the US, we don't have all the help. You had to make your bed before going to school. So everybody will wake up early. You have to have your bath, make your bed. Otherwise, you make everyone late. You need to wash plates. You need to do this, do that. So there's nobody there to serve anyone. All of us are serving each other. So I'm very proud. I think my boys, I have 3 young men now. They know that there's no woman there to wait on them hand and foot when they get married. They have to be equal partners, serving the women, just as the women will serve them. That's how we brought them up. And my husband was totally instrumental. We taught all the children how to cook at age 12, both the boys and girls, at least rice and stew, plantain, pasta. They can make the basics for their family so their wife will not be, their husband will not. So that's what I say, teach them early. Don't assume they're children. They don't know how to do anything. Communicate with them. Be honest with your spouse. Be transparent. Support him as he supports you, and get him to understand that you're in it together. And be honest from the start. Many women who come to me for mentoring is because they've not been very open with their husbands. So it begins to cause you difficulty in the beginning. You can always then change things if it's not working and communicate better.
Wow, that's amazing. I cannot let you go, Madam, without touching on COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic. In your capacity as the chair of Gavi, which is a very important organization, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, which has become even more important now with the pandemic. There's a lot of fear out there, and of course also a lot of conspiracy theories that we've all been reading about on this issue. What do you think we need to know at this time?
Well, thank you very much. This is probably one of the things I've done in my life where I feel so privileged to be at the cutting edge of what is happening in the world and be working on vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines at the moment. It is really something amazing to me. So what should you know? First, for this COVID-19 pandemic, we say to everyone, no one in the world is safe until everyone is safe, because of the manner in which COVID is transmitted. So we all have to take precautions, wear masks, wash our hands, but above all, when vaccines come and become available, get yourself vaccinated. Let me say this, there are now 3 vaccines coming on, and Gavi, the organization, which I'm the chair of the board, has worked on something called the COVAX facility. And what we are trying to do there is to make sure there's accessibility and equitable distribution for poorer countries so that all the rich countries don't grab all the vaccines. The WHO is one of the organizations squarely behind this, this facility. And they're going to certify and tell us whether vaccines are safe or not. They will give emergency use authorization. So will the countries in which these vaccines are being made. And many of them have very strong regulatory systems. So don't be afraid. When a vaccine comes out, we have the Pfizer one now, we have Moderna, and we have AstraZeneca. From the COVAX facility, we've already signed an MOU for 300 million doses of AstraZeneca. We have millions of doses of Pfizer. We're also negotiating with Moderna. The AstraZeneca is less expensive, more stable in terms of being used in developing countries. So once we manage to get these vaccines in, I myself am going to take it. People ask me, will you take the vaccine? The answer is yes, because I want to be responsible, not only to save myself, but to save others. If you don't take it and you become a carrier for your parents who are elderly or others, that is not good. So I would strongly say, don't worry, they will all be certified safe. And I would advise take them when they become available.
Thank you so, so much, Madam. Wasn't she wonderful? Can we give her a round of applause, please? And unfortunately, she's going to have to leave us, for another commitment. So I just want to symbolically hand over the Distinguished WISCAR Award to you. And hopefully during your next visit to Lagos, we can meet you and do the formal photo op. So just give me one moment. Fabia, the Executive Secretary of WISCAR, is joining me here. And I'm going to be handing over the Distinguished WISCAR Award. And the recipient on your behalf, Madam, is none other than the chairperson of the Planning Committee, Folake Animomuni, who also is a top executive in First Bank. And essentially, do you want to read what we've stated on it?
Trying to read without my glasses. Yes. Continue to ignore no vision, which comes to nudge your range and increase your spirit, by Maya Angelou. Mm. And this award is being presented in recognition of your outstanding contributions to building a better world through your advocacy, work for global economic development, good governance, healthcare, and women empowerment, and for your inspirational leadership.
Thank you very much. So we're receiving this on Folake is receiving it on your behalf, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala. Thank you very much for honoring our invitation. Thank you very much for your enlightening contribution and all the words of wisdom and everything you have shared on this platform this morning with us. We're really, really grateful. Over to you for your response.
Thank you so much, Amina, for every award that I receive. I feel very grateful. I'm very humble. I just want to thank you for this recognition. I never take anything for granted. There are so many talented people out there. So I appreciate the recognition. I am very pleased it's coming from my own country and from an organization that is dealing with women. You can see me smiling. I can't feel all of you, but I can feel you in a way with your clapping and your comments that you're sending in. I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to interact with you one more time. And I know there are also some young men who are with us today. Thank you for sharing. Please keep supporting women. Women also need you. To be he for she's, because that's the only way we can make it. So Amina, fantastic job. Your executive, fantastic. I hope I can see and touch you in person very soon. Keep up the good work. Love you all. Bye-bye.